Welcome to Challenge and Choose Radio Network. I'm your host, Chad Butler. Today I've got with me producer Jacob. Jacob, how are we doing today?
Awesome, thank you.
Today we are going to be talking about my new book that's coming out and kind of where I got my start in this new business of Challenge and Choose. The title of my book is called Stop Chasing Your Tell. And tell is spelled T-A-L-E. The premise of the book is the patterns we get into in life and from the stories that we tell ourselves. If we're honest with ourselves, each of us would admit that we get into patterns of insanity where we keep doing the same things, trying to get different results. Sometimes it's around money, sometimes it's in relationships, maybe it's our self-image, but we all have these patterns where we keep getting the same results, but we want something different. And the question is how? So that's where my book came about, is helping people become aware of the patterns that we get into and aware of the results that we're getting. The 3-step process of the book and of my business, Challenge and Choose, is awakening, challenge, and then choose. So we've talked about the awakening part of the process. So important when we understand why we're getting the results that we're getting. It's important to just be aware of those results. The choose phase comes in is, let's challenge it. Let's challenge, why are we getting the results, and is this ultimately what we want? In my life, I have been able to overcome a lot of patterns in my life that allowed me to have complete transformations, whether it was my business, in my personal relationships, in my spiritual life, and in my personal life. The transitions were so key to my life that I decided to sell my business, sell my life, and my wife and I uprooted from Salt Lake City, Utah, and we moved to Austin, Texas. So the book, Jacob, is kind of what our story on how we got to become here today. And today I'm a public speaker. I do workshops. I do individual coaching for executives, for any number of peoples and cells. And I gave up everything because of the experiences of my life, and the outcomes of them were so profound, and I can see it in other people. I've always had this curiosity on why we do the things that we do. And I know I've told you the story of when I was in college, I had this curiosity of human behavior and actually studied psychology. And while I was in my senior year, we started learning about conditioning. You know, conditioning is the idea of every part of our life's experience, we're developing a framework and beliefs around that, whether it was a divorce from our parents, or maybe being raised in a real strict environment or a real loosey-goosey environment, or maybe we had got picked on or bullied, or whatever the experiences were. You know, maybe we had a wonderful upbringing and have like a ton of confidence, and nothing seems to stand in our way. Each one of us have had our experiences in life that have conditioned us to believe what we believe. And that framework, that mindset, that belief creates our future results, and we don't even realize it. And that's how we get into these patterns. You know, I have coached women who have always chosen the wrong man. We all know that person that just seems to always find the bad boy, right? And they get into these patterns, and then they hate themselves for it when they fall into the patterns of being treated poorly, not being appreciated, maybe even being taken advantage of. And every relationship they get into, they get the same result. I spent 17 years as a financial planner, and time again, I would see these agents come in And I could see where they had mindsets around being afraid of what people would think or being afraid of making mistakes. And so they would never stretch outside of their comfort zone to improve their marketplace, to work with more successful people, to improve their own business. And I would see people leave time and time again, guys that were more than qualified, but they had these patterns in their life around their view of success or their view of how they present. Will people trust me? Am I just a fraud? Every single person had these different mindsets that limited the successes they were getting in life. So that was that my desire to write a book was to help kind of bring awareness to these patterns. Where in your life, Jacob, do you see patterns that have affected you in business? We all have them. Be vulnerable with us today. Be my guinea pig.
Well, you're right. I think we all have certain mindsets, and I have had quite a few myself just in business alone, just because I feel like a lot of my buddies and friends went like to big colleges or universities, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I didn't want to just hop into something and like go to like a big college or go to some big university. I went to more of a community college, and I went to school because a lot of my friends, buddies were into like street racing and streetcar racing. So I went and got certified for auto collision repair, auto collision refinishing, automotive technology. From that point, I started my own auto shop. Thought that's where I wanted to be for quite a while. And then I realized it's not really what I want to do after I worked in the industry for a while. But one of my mindsets I always had to deal with is that everybody was smarter than me because they went to these big colleges, these universities. When I had talked to somebody and they had went to college or they have a degree, I'd be intimidated by them. I wouldn't want to talk to them. I didn't feel like I was smart enough for them, to be conversating with. I had a lot of things in those aspects that were holding me back in life.
So let me ask you something. So with the mindset of not feeling smart enough, that's something that I can relate to, and I know a lot of my listeners can relate to. Tell me back then, because it sounds like you've overcome a lot. You have awareness, and it sounds like, but in the beginning, when you first started realizing it, what patterns in hindsight what patterns did you get into that prevented your ultimate successes? In other words, that mindset limited you in areas of your life. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
So what were some of the patterns, and maybe what were some of the results briefly that you can just briefly relate to?
Well, some of them, like when I'd be talking to people and somebody has a college education, maybe I'm talking to, I feel a little bit intimidated. And sometimes I would have like a feeling inside that I should do this with my business. And this person with a college education would come tell me and explain it in nice words and make it sound just so appropriate and say I need to do kind of the opposite of what I was thinking. So early on in my career in marketing and just in my life, I would kind of go with the more educated person because it sounded right, sounded like it made sense, kind of go with what their suggestion was. Then what I realized is time after time, I kept hitting a block wall to pretty much things that they were telling me were not working. But the thoughts that I had, I would go back and try because either that wouldn't work and I have to try to do something new. But then I'd eventually try what I was thinking should have worked in the first place, and then it would work. So for me, it was listening to them enough to where I realized where my feelings or thoughts inside were the right ones. Now, maybe they were right and they were educated on it, but for me, my circumstances, it wasn't the right fit. So just little things like that.
Man, what a relatable mindset. I grew up with ADHD, and I was the kid that was always in the principal's office. I compensated through humor my feelings of inadequacy, my feelings of being afraid to be called upon by the teacher because I half the time didn't even know what we were talking about because I wasn't paying attention. My attention span was like that of a shrew, and where I had sat by the girls who were really smart, who could recite back the whole lesson of the day. I didn't even know what we were talking about. It might have been math, it might have been science. I don't even remember. My point was that's how it was for me going through grade school, and it was a constant battle. So that my conditioning personally, which is why I think it's your mindset is so relatable to life, because I've met so many people through my workshops and through individual coaching, that feeling of inadequacy and not being smart enough. And it's interesting where that holds us back. There's so many areas of life because I recognize that I am just as smart as a lot of my peers. And in a lot of ways, I'm a lot more, my intelligence is a lot more practical to life, where theirs is more, I have to take the linear approach. I learned it, and this square box has to fit into a square hole in order for it to work. For me, I'm more of a problem solver. That's more of my strength. But my limitation of not feeling smart enough led into my business, not unknowingly, right? I made it through college with the Lord's help. I mean, it was difficult for me, but I was grateful that I got my degree. I kept thinking I was going to get a phone call from, the school district saying, yeah, that you actually didn't graduate. For so long, I was afraid that I really didn't graduate for whatever reason, because I wasn't smart enough. In college, I remember my last semester, I'd go to the counselor's office like twice a week, and I would say, are you sure I have enough credits? Like, is there any classes that I failed that I'm not aware of? Or like I just didn't really put myself in that academia world. I wasn't my strength, and I just kept thinking something's gonna crash on me, and I really didn't graduate. Like, it's interesting, but I remember believing that. So it kind of bled into my career when I started working with professional people, attorneys and CPAs. I was intimidated by them. And I developed the mindset that they were deal killers, that these guys think that their ideas are the only ideas that are work. They're not interested in my ideas. And I would go into these appointments with this type of a mindset. I mean, Jacob, can you appreciate how I acted, how my belief of feeling stupid, which was subconscious at the time, because this is one of the transformations I had in my business that transformed my business into a sexy beast, and overcoming this mindset around feeling inadequate around them changed my whole world. It's interesting how my results manifested exactly what I believed. They never took my advice. They never gave me referrals, no matter how much I asked. Like, I would connect with people personally because that's one of my talents, but I couldn't get business from them. And when I was trained to sell their clients, they never supported anything that I did because that's what I believed. So for me, Jacob, that mindset of not feeling smart enough in my business, it translated to that. And after losing like 5 pretty good sized cases, I'm like, enough's enough. Like, this is my career. This is what I do. Like, I've got to figure out how to communicate better with CPAs and attorneys. And there's a few things I want to get into, but we've got to give our sponsorships a little opportunity. So let's break for a moment and don't change that dial. Come back to Challenge and Choose Radio, and we'll figure out and talk about how we're going to start overcoming mindsets to start getting the results we want in life.
Well, I finally did it. My student loan is totally paid off.
What? What about our plan to win the lottery and start living? Travel the world on matching yachts, wear enough jewelry to require a bodyguard, vacation on the French Riviera, and then buy it.
You know we're never going to win the lottery, right?
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Well, we're back with Challenge and Choose Radio. Again, I'm your host, Chad Butler. Today I've got one of my producers / engineers on, producer Jacob, as we call him. How are we doing again, Jacob?
Awesome, Chad. Awesome. Just love the conversation of what we're talking about, just the mindsets and how it really affects our outcomes.
Yeah, it's interesting. And for all you listeners out there, if you haven't, log on to my website, challengeandshoes.com. We've got some great content. We've got other radio programs you can listen to, other videos. We've got some snippets from past workshops. So if you like the content, if you like to explore human behavior, if you like the idea of I want a better life, I want to overcome some mindsets and have my best year ever in business, or I want to improve my relationships, whatever it is, come join us at challengeandshoes.com and let's forge a relationship together.
And don't forget, for the listeners out there, we also have the challengeandchoosestore.com, which you can get some of the cool gear out there. Just a little plug for the Challenge and Choose store. You check out the radio shows, TV shows. We also have a game coming, so you can check that all out. Tons of great stuff coming in the Challenge and Choose network, but all of it is developed to try to help you guys become better and more successful in your life, relationships, business. If you're a manager of a big corporation or managing groups of people, to become a better leader. And I think the whole Challenge and Choose system is, I think, the missing link. I feel like a lot of these people out there, motivational speakers, are talking about the right stuff, but sometimes they're not really putting it all together. And I feel like the Challenge and Choose is just helping you put those pieces together.
I appreciate you saying that, Jacob. I know you've expressed some of the changes that you have manifested in your life, and my gosh, it's just helped me tremendously. So today we're talking about my book, Stop Chasing Your Tail, which is kind of my lead into how I got to where I'm at here today. We were talking about conditioning, talking about one of the mindsets that Jacob and I kind of share. I'm sure if we talk, we'd probably have 50 or so mindsets that we can probably relate to in our life, right?
Yeah.
So this idea around not feeling smart enough, it's fascinating to me because there's so many people. I know people who are brilliant, people who went to Ivy League schools that feel that way about themselves, which I find astonishing. It's relatable to me, being ADHD, struggling in school, the results of my tests as they come back, time and time again, I was conditioned to, I got poor grades on my tests in grade school, I blew the spelling test, blew the math test, constantly needed. So I can appreciate that on where I came up with these. I was relating it to my business on how I later in life began to believe that CPAs were deal killers. Attorneys were deal killers for financial planners. We would get into dialogue at my office, Jacob, where we would talk about how these professionals hated working with commission-driven agents, because our interest was making money, not our clients. Okay, that was part of our discussions. They're deal killers. They think that they're so smart that anyone else's ideas was wrong. Okay, so appreciate maybe 3 or 4 guys at the water cooler. We're insurance salesmen, financial planners, talking about CPAs, the stories that we talked about. See, the name of my book again, Stop Chasing Your Tail, or in other words, stop chasing your stories. And here we were at the proverbial water cooler, and we're sharing our war stories about how we're losing deals because of these guys. We hate them. They're snooty. They're, and one guy would be like, they're just jealous that we make more money. They have all these degrees and they're so smart, but yet they're limited. Like, that was his story. My point was, we all had our pattern or our stories, or what we call it Challenge and Choose, or we emphasize our mindsets. And our mindsets will always lead to the results we get in life. And what's interesting about this one for me, Jacob, I believed it and it happened. So before the break, we were talking about how I had lost about 4 or 5 pretty significant cases, maybe over an 18-month period of really hard work, like finding really good quality prospects who needed and wanted what I had to offer. enjoyed me, we connected, but then the attorney or the CPA would kill it, completely squash it. Why? I kept saying to myself, what is it that I'm not doing? So I decided to get real with myself, and I became aware. Each one of those cases were what I call the awakening. I was having awakening moments. Every time I lost a case was another opportunity for me to learn what I needed to learn about my mindsets. But I refused to listen to it. I refused to take responsibility for that being my problem.
Always somebody else's problem.
It's always someone else's problem.
Well, that's something that's kind of funny that you always would tell us is we're always creating these stories. And I never really thought about it, but sometimes the stories we create are going to fit whatever sounds best to us. Like you were saying, attorneys and CPAs or whatever are deal killers, and they're just jealous of us because we make more money. So to you or somebody else, that would make sense. For me, I was telling myself, you know what? For a while there, I'd be like, one reason I did the auto classes and all that, because there were people going to college. So I was like, all right, well, they may go to college, but I could do something that they won't be able to do. So then my whole life, I felt like I was trying to do stuff. Like I learned how to become a full general contractor and do every aspect of construction, because I was like, well, he may be able to read a book good or talk really smooth, but I could build a whole house.
I can figure stuff out.
Yeah, I could figure stuff out.
I'm trying to prove that you're smart.
Exactly.
So the behavior, the mindset is I'm not smart enough, so your behaviors to support it, you're the other side of the coin. And some people will fear not being smart, and it'll make them catatonic, like they won't step into anything because they're afraid that it'll come true, so they stay small. You reacted a different way. You reacted, I'm going to prove, right? Okay, this is what I did. We want to prove to everyone that how smart we are. And you would do it in ways that felt safe to you, using your hands. You're very mechanical. You can like figure things out. Like since I've known you, it's like nothing stands in your way of figuring it out. And that's come from these mindsets. I can see it where it's like, hey, I'm not stupid. I can figure anything out. And in a way, it's limited you, and in a way, it's giving you a lot of opportunity, right?
Absolutely.
But the challenge is, and the thing that I would like to really emphasize with you, it's not like I don't want you to continue to have this this confidence and this ability to figure things out and to expand your life. But if you believe it, you're still not any happier. You could be, every trade in the industry. You could write code for computer programming. You can take a car apart and back together again. You could restore a home. You might be able to build an atomic bomb. It's an insatiable mindset. See, this is still a pattern.
Oh, absolutely.
It's still the dog chasing its tail. You want to accept yourself for just being who you are. I have a coach in my life who I love dearly, and one of the things that she taught me early on was, you're not smart and you're not stupid. You're just you, right?
Absolutely.
It has nothing to do with being smart, and it has nothing to do with being stupid. It's just loving you for who you are. And once you accept that, once I accepted it, then the patterns go away. And then if you choose to learn how to be a programmer or an auto guy or, internet guy, whatever it is your passions are, you'll just naturally be really good at that and get out of this insatiable. It's an insatiable. That's why it's circular. The dog will never get his tail.
Well, I feel like now that you say it that way, that like a lot of this time, I had the mindset and then I was challenging it this whole time. Which, to understand it or recognize that you have a certain mindset or maybe something you're not good at or good at, but then I was constantly challenging it. Some people, there's a block of fear to where they don't challenge it. But my problem is I was still going in the circles in the challenging part. At some point I had to choose that I was either going to be smarter or different, or that I'm just in it, accept myself as I was. So I think, the challenge and choose is a huge part of it, because you can't just keep challenging what's going on around you. At some point, you actually have to choose,
So let me ask you this question, and I want you to answer this for the whole public. For all the listeners out there, I want to ask you something. Do you think it is possible that we can change these patterns? Is it possible to take a mindset we've had our whole life and change it and start getting a different result? I mean, do you think the general population, I know how you feel, but if you were answering based on what you know about the general public and human behavior, what would your view be? Do you think they think it's possible that we can change and get different results?
Well, the thing is I believe that we could all change and get the results that we want in life. The hardest part is just changing your mindset and actually
knowing how.
And knowing how. Not only knowing how, sometimes it's the actual emotions that are going through it. And the emotions are a lot of times harder than actually doing it, I think. Like a lot of times I think of stuff and me going through the motions or me failing or me doing this or that holds me back a lot more than me actually doing it. Because when I'm doing it, I'm just ready for whatever I have to deal with. So I think anybody could do it, but not everybody's strong enough to actually accept it and actually go forward.
Is it a strong enough thing, or is it just a knowledge thing? Because I wonder if people who attend my workshops, like toward the middle of the workshops, I'll start getting questions like, okay, I get it, but how do we change it?
And that's
the $1 million question.
That's a $1 million
right?
question.
Willingness, I think, is the key. Are they willing? In other words, is the pain great enough? Are they frustrated enough with these patterns? See, for me, again, going back to the CPA thing, I became four cases for me was enough of an awakening experiences for me to say, I got to fix this. I know so many guys who close all of their biggest deals from attorneys and from CPAs. They're bringing them the sweetest cases, and they're closing sophisticated stuff, which I love to work in, and they're getting their biggest deals from working with these professionals. So I said to myself, enough's enough. So I was unwilling to even see the pattern on my first case, second, third. It took 4 or 5. Then I saw, I'm chasing this tail. I'm in this circle. I'm wearing out the grass right here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm wearing it out, trying to get
creating
that
a path.
Trying to get that tail, right? So for me, it's like enough's enough. So by uncovering it and becoming aware of it, I had to challenge it. You hit it on the head. I had to challenge, what is it? Where do I need to take responsibility? And it kind of comes to you because our bodies have all of the answers. Our mind has every answer of any question we'll ever need to know. We just need to ask, and we need to explore it. And just asking the question, my body comes up with a solution. It's an interesting process that you have to trust. And I started thinking about being stupid. By overcoming that mindset of feeling inadequate, what was the most interesting thing is that my stories changed at the office. I didn't engage in their deal killers anymore. I started closing deals. My biggest cases started coming from these professionals, and all of my marketing from that moment in my career, which was about my 5th year of 17 years, was exclusively, for the most part, CPAs and some attorneys, but mostly CPAs. I just marketed exclusively. So which story is true? Well, they're both true. CPAs were deal killers, and now they're the lifeblood of my business. Now, do you find that as interesting as I do?
Oh, absolutely.
It was a true story, and at the office we talked about it. I got those results. When I changed the mindset, then new results came. I find it interesting. Well, that's about all the time we have today. Again, we want people to check in with us at challengeandchoose.com. That's challengeandchoose.com. Look us up on Facebook. Look us up on Twitter. We'd love to get to know each and every one of you. Come join the Challenge and Choose Revelation, where our motto is new stories, new life. We can change the stories. We can get the results we want. And next, we're going to kind of take this same discussion and we're going to focus it more on relationships, the impact of these mindsets around relationships. So thank you for tuning in today. We hope to see you again. Tweet to us, Facebook us, give us some feedback. We'd love to know who our listeners are. Again, that's challengeandshoes.com. Thanks a lot.